Do we have questions?
No, absolutely not. Yes, I don't know. What are we doing here, guys?
Oh, geez, I almost closed the window.
Are we starting this one off with a dance? I mean, we're not talking about Asus tonight, though. So, is it? I mean, not to that. Well, actually, we probably will. My bad. Ayo, what's good, everyone? Yokoso, which means welcome if you're new, and welcome back if you're not. I'm joined by my awesome panelists tonight to talk about the Super X, the Onexplayer latest and greatest AI Max Plus 395 monstrous beast, 120 watts. I don't know how much this is going to cost. This is probably going to be really painful. Please introduce yourselves, everyone.
I'm Cliff from TikTok.
Perfect. I love it.
Hey, this is Zach from Hands Turn.
Hey, this is Nelly from Gaming Repairs.
You know what's really funny? You all really need to know this, because right before we started recording this, Clef was just talking about how much more comfortable everyone is now and how not awkward it is. But I guess I'm not the only one who is awkward. So that's perfect. Thank you, Clef. I much appreciate that. I want to say, I want to get everyone's gauge on this newly announced Onexplayer Super X, which, funny story, if you are on our Discord, and if you're not, I highly encourage you to join. We essentially bullied them into making, I'm just going to say, we bullied them into making it because we were talking about the Onexplayer X1 Max. They chose not to take our name, which truthfully I'm a little salty about, but I get it because it's not the same form factor device. It's actually a lot different. And we have basically a full spec sheet that we're going to talk about. So I'm first, though, going to ask Nelly, on a scale of 1 to 395, how hyped are you about this device?
Wow. Can we call it the Super Max? Like, right?
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. The Super Max.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like Super 1 Max, Super 1X Max. Like, oh man. Yeah. What were they thinking?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll take Super X. I mean, whatever. But Super Max would have been way cooler.
Yeah.
395. Like
395. Oh.
10 out of 10. I'm so excited.
All right. What about you?
Give it to me.
I want to say about 250. No, 285.
285. I know what numbers Zach is going to go with. What is it?
385.
There it is. That's what I was looking for. Yes, sir.
I was thinking it now.
Yes, sir. You win the Price is Right game, my friend.
$1.
Yes, I honestly think that, I think a lot of the community is hyped about this device, particularly after there was a lot of roasting and pitchfork action going on with the Win 5 after we talked about it last time. And after Clef had made sure that we're never going to get to talk to GPD. But I do want to kind of emphasize this point about this Super X. What do we think? Because this is the first thing that we have to talk about before we kind of take things back and take a look at the specs. What are we thinking about this Super Max price, Clef?
Super X, I would have called it X1 Ultra personally, but whatever. Price? Okay. I think realistically, anyone thinking that, look, do I want it below 2,000? Of course, man, I'll pay 1,000 if they'll let me pay 1,000 for it. But I think it's unrealistic to expect under 2,000 personally. Would I love that? 100%. But I think most people would agree that beyond performance, beyond the APU, the next extremely tangible and noticeable upgrade that you can get to a device has got to be the panel. And any manufacturer should know that. Having AMOLED, putting aside how much it costs, has a very strong perceivable value. That alone justifies having at least a price point that is around the range of Asus. And I'm not trying to give Onexplayer any ideas here. I'm just being realistic. I don't think it's going to be under 2,000 personally.
Fair point. And to kind of paraphrase what you have said on a previous episode, I believe you were saying something like displays are one of those things that people do consider like upgrades. So, I mean,
Sure.
if we're looking at, a device that's maybe year on year, like a refresh, like something we also talked about before, like phones, sometimes it's hard when you're just talking about specs and numbers and stuff like that for people to feel something that's, worth more of their money, except when you give them a prettier display to look at, right?
Totally.
In that case, people are a little bit more inclined, right? So, what about you, Zach? I know you're all in for the 385, but you have to have some price estimates here.
Hopefully that model we can get below 2000, which I doubt they're even using that processor anyway, but so we're probably still dreaming. I'm going to say 22.
22. Okay. All right. So
Probably right around 22.
So hot off the heels of our last episode, most people probably still shouldn't buy it, or they're probably still too broke to buy it, right? That's what we're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way.
Yeah. Okay. So I saved Nelly. For the last of the price estimate because I know she's going to buy this thing regardless, anyways.
Absolutely. Take my money.
Okay. So how much do you think this is realistically going to cost? And I don't mean the Ava edition because I know you're all in on that.
I'm all in on that. And a controller. I need to match everything. You pop out Ava Unit 2, now everything is take my money. This you know what I think would be really good if somehow on Indiegogo they had a way to like have a payment plan. Like there's some of those companies that just allow you to do like 4 equal payments or whatever with like minimal interest or zero interest. I think that would be a really smart play with some of these handheld companies to be able to capture that wider audience of people who want to get into it but don't have the money up front, but will be able to handle a payment plan for something like this. Like I think that's a way to open doors to a broader market. But I would say like it's going to be over $2,000. Like it has to be over $2,000. And it depends like how much RAM you're going to put in it. If it's easy to take off that backplate, then maybe you might not get that higher terabyte drive, like right off the bat. Maybe you'll opt to get a 4 terabyte down the road. But if it's like the X1 where you really have to like pull off stickers and crack plates, like how easy is it to access to be able to get that NVMe swapped? Those are all things to factor in when you're trying to figure out what price point you're able to get into. But definitely over $2,000.
Right. I think those are good points that you made. And everyone talking about the price point, I think is also very important and very valid for the audience to know, because I'm sure that there's some hopium out there that it's going to come under the price of the Z13, which last I checked starts at $2,300 US. And here's the thing. I mean, I think we would all love for that to be true, but it seems very unlikely simply because this Super X seems to have some upgrades over even the Z13, like what Clef had mentioned about the AMOLED display. Not to mention that it is larger. We do have confirmation that it's a 14-inch panel versus the Z13's 13.4. Right. So, I mean, no matter how you want to cut those numbers, I mean, it's a bigger display and it's a higher quality or a more expensive display. Right.
And we have also, like, not by law, but we have a larger battery. Was it a 70 watt hour on the road?
Oh, no, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yes, I believe it is 70. We'll have to put up the numbers up in post. But yes, you're right. It's a larger battery on the Super X. We do again have confirmation that is the 83.5 watt hour battery. So to put that kind of in perspectives with our handhelds, that would be the largest battery that is in existence. Even though this is like we're definitely arguing semantics. This I don't think you can realistically call a handheld because it doesn't have the built-in controllers that the X1 Pro and X1 Air have. So this is very much more along the lines of like a 2-in-1 tablet, a Surface Pro, a Z13, than it is more like even its own brother or cousin, the X1, right? So along the other list, going with the other specs that we have 2 USB-C, that's a USB 4 ports, 1 HDMI output, 1 USB-A port. I assume that's like 3.2 Gen 2 or something like that. 1 DC barrel jack for power. And then we have the new mini SSD, which is supposed to be a PCIe4 capable like SSD. So this is like a brand new thing that was just announced. And you may have seen some articles pop up about this. But I want to ask now what the panel thinks about like these unique offerings, particularly the SSD. Like, Is this something that you think is really setting the price apart? Is this, not that interesting? It's just like a new kind of gimmick. What's your take on that, Nelly?
So when we're talking SSD, like, do we mean the 2280 or you mean like a micro SD?
It's funny that you mentioned that. So two things. It is a 2280 SSD that's inside of the unit, which I assume is going to start at 1 terabyte and go up to maybe even 8 terabytes, depending on like how thick this chassis is, right? But there is a different kind of SSD that's in this device, which is like a brand new type of SSD that nobody has ever used or seen before.
Okay.
So it has, so the speeds of this thing are supposed to be PCIe4. So the specs of PCIe4 typically like 7,000 megabytes per second, right? So pretty, fast. So the people who are concerned about like micro SD card slot being too slow, overheating type of thing, that shouldn't be a concern with this. But given that, like what should be a concern is the super max price that like it entails by including this, right? So have you had a chance to look at this specification of this new type of SSD?
No, that's why I was like, give me some clarification.
Yeah, no. So
I'm sure even the viewers are wondering the same.
Yeah, this is like a brand new thing. Clef, can you tell us anything about it, or is that?
Well, the Win 5 is also going to have the same new type of card, and think like the Switch 2 that has the micro SD Express. It's essentially the same thing. We're looking at a new format, but rather than going into like the route that micro SDs and SDs have, we're really going the SSD and VME route. So much faster speed, much higher capacity. And I would expect that with that will come a pretty beefy price point, but there's really no, at least I haven't researched that. I don't know how much that's going to cost. This is like a very brand new, newly announced format that before the Win 5, I honestly had never heard of. So that's about as far as I know.
I think that's a great point. Zach, can you tell us any more about it?
Nothing for sure. I can speculate. I can't imagine it's going to play a ton into the price of the device itself. I mean, you're just talking, a connector and some motherboard traces, whatever. I mean, that's all basically the same. What I think would be expensive would be, like these cards themselves, when we were looking, these 2230 SSDs, trying to get those in a 2 terabyte, whatever, like you were paying an arm and a leg at first. So, I mean, it's got to be the same way on this end. So, I mean, I think that's definitely where it's going to hurt you. So, I mean, if I'm thinking this thing's going to be 2200, you might be paying $300 to $400 for one of these, mini SSDs. And then all of a sudden you're over 2,500 mark for a total package.
I'm loving excuse me. I'm loving this direction that you're talking about. We're absolutely on the same wavelength about that. I think that, to your point, I'm not entirely sure that the cost of including access to something like this on the device itself will be that expensive, but definitely the drives themselves will be expensive, right? If we're considering that there are PCIe4 compatible SSDs. They're a new type of SSD that Clef talked about. And we already see like the Switch 2 micro SD express cards are not cheap either. And so we factor those things together, and possibly that there's few manufacturers that make these new SSDs. It's going to be pricey.
Well,
so
if I may, and we're going to go into tinfoil hat territory here, but just before we started recording, so that viewers have a reference, we were talking about just reference design with the APU and why some things that we'll talk about in the video may not be part of the Onexplayer upcoming device. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of agreement between manufacturers to push the medium. And I wouldn't be surprised if we'll also see it on INEO, because if we're talking about something that has the speed that is reported to have, we're looking at a direct access at PCI lanes. Why is that not something else, right? Anyways, just food for thought. Keep that in mind, and we'll talk about other things during the video.
I think that's also a great direction that you're pointing us in there, Clef, because there's I have two particular thoughts about that. One, and that is that if you are considering buying this thing and you're willing to throw the money at it, it does not have a micro SD card listed. So this means that whatever storage that you put on there, that's what it's going to have. right? Sure, you can open it up, but let's also be realistic. Not everybody wants to do that or is capable of doing that, right? Sometimes, even though it's not supposed to void your warranty, like companies might like give pushback on that as well. And I'm not saying Onexplayer will do that. I'm simply saying companies might try that, particularly if they don't have like let's say a U.S. office or something like that, where they can be holden to the same type of rules and laws and stuff, right? It's just something to be considerate or to think about. The other thing is when we're talking about those kind of unique offerings that Clef is talking about. I know, Nelly, you were just talking about this before we went live, about particular ports that maybe it should or shouldn't have, right? Like what was on your thought?
Well, my thought was having Thunderbolt 5, of course, like and being able to utilize some of the eGPUs that are coming out of the market, because boy, having that display with like sick graphics coming in, which it's still going to have amazing graphics, but just having that extra boost on that display, I mean, that's huge and awesome. You can still do it with the Thunderbolt 4, but it's just nice to have that extra boost if it was including all these other upgrades, especially with what you mentioned with the drive that's going to be in there and this new technology. It's like, just give me some more of the new technology then. Like, let's just give me a taste of something, but give me something more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that, because, again, coming off the coattails of our last episode about, not spending all your money and not buying all the latest handhelds, we have to consider like the overall picture of this thing. If it's costing over $2,000, yes, you are getting a premium device. You are getting a lot of performance. But if we're putting in the perspective of other things, particularly Clef's hot take about streaming from like a desktop, or even let's even say like a mini PC, we can find AI Max 395 mini PCs right now, I believe, for around like $1,600. Right. And then if you toss in like the Red Magic Astra or whatever, you're bumping up against that. You're bumping up against that $2,000 mark. But what separates the two experiences we're talking about, other than the streaming, it's that port connectivity and the possibility to expand further from that Nelly's talking about. Right. Some of those, I believe the AI Max 395 mini PCs, the one I think from like GMK Tech or Minis Forum, it has an Oculink port, which
does.
There is one, I believe, at least has an Oculink port. So this device doesn't have one, at least not to our knowledge anyway. And so we're kind of capped at a certain level, right? So this means that, regardless of whatever the situation is with Thunderbolt 5 and like future GPUs and stuff, there is this upward limit, and you would have to get really creative if you wanted to go beyond that. And when I say really creative, I don't think anybody is really going to rip off the back of this thing and put, an M.2 to Oculink thing on the back of this, because that would be pretty wild to spend this kind of money and then also do that. But speaking of the money part, here's where I'm going to kind of loop back to the beginning. What do you think that the cost has to be, considering the landscape of all these, I guess the 395 devices that we have now, and most likely the more that are coming out? What has to be like the most compelling thing, in addition, or maybe because of price, for the audience to make this like the best 395 device? Zach, can I start with you?
OLED for one. I mean, that's like the easy, we'll grab the low hanging fruit here. It's bigger, it's a better looking screen. The screen really, I'd say, is definitely the easiest one to pick out of all of those.
Fair. Yeah. Very, very fair. Clef, you got thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. And I will continue directly where Zach went. Is the screen, yes, but let's not forget we're looking at landscape with VRR, and we're also looking at AMOLED. Now, we have looked at the specs. We presume that we understand which panel it is, and based off of that, we can look at faster response time. So even if we were at matching performance, which is not the case, obviously, because it's going to have a Max 395, but even if we were, the delivery of your frames compared to not every, but the wide landscape of handhelds, even though it's not a handheld, but you know what I mean. that is a massive improvement. That is a massive upgrade. You're also looking at, because it's OLED, you have less self-emissive pixel leakage, light leakage per pixel. So your image appears as if it's a higher resolution. OLED has so many benefits, and that's such a big thing to have with such a high power output, which we just haven't seen because the ROG Flow Z13 did not have OLED/AMOLED and its device. So for me, that's for sure the one thing that could justify people jumping on. And I promise I'll stay very tamed, but I think.
Oh no, we want all the hot takes, man. We want all of them.
I think.
Are you gonna grill Onexplayer this time for not having a backpack, for not having a battery backpack? That's what the audience wants.
We don't know. Maybe there's going to be an Indiegogo accessory, so I'll wait and see. But yeah. I feel like it would have been easier to accept the compromises that the GPD Win 5 has if it had an AMOLED panel, if it had, TMR sticks. Like, I guess we don't know everything about the device, but from what we know, I feel like there are things, and TMR sticks is really not that big a deal, all things considered. But I do feel like there are things that makes this device not feel premium enough for the compromises that you have to make and the price point that I expect will have to have. Whereas the Super X, you guys confuse me. Is it Super Max?
Super X. You want to call it Super Max though, right? Don't you?
Yeah, because it's been called Super Max so much during this episode so far. So I was confused.
Super Max will be next year's refresh.
Okay. Then Super X for the time being, I think does enough to not only make the value proposition more compelling, but even does enough to make you think, wait, that sounds like a better device than even what Asus has put out. That's no small feat. And it's probably too early to say that it will be the case for sure, but it's still something to consider.
No, that's well said. What about you, Nelly?
I'll leave the display business off to the side. These guys have handled the display.
Okay, so what is it for you? You think?
I feel like that's good.
Yeah.
I'd say really the Z13 is the competitor here, and the NVMe size is locked to a 2230 on the Z13. Like, you're limited to the capacity that you can have in your device. And at this point, like for my handhelds, a 2 terabyte is like bare minimum that I need. Most of mine I've been swapping to 4 terabytes just to have that extra space. It's not like I need to play all those games, but to have to re-download and delete when you want to play something, and the games just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So really, from like a longer term perspective, like you're going to need that bigger drive. And if you're picking up a device like this, your games that you're playing are probably like the AAA games that are more demanding. I mean, I can't imagine you're playing indie games and that's why you're picking up the Super X. Like, if you are, sure, that's great. You go for it. I will support you. But really, it should be the AAA games, and you're going to see the benefit from that. And having that extra size on the NVMe is huge. And then also that extra power output. So I feel like this should be a better device because we are pushing more out of this device. Like, we do have, it's supposed to be 120 watts versus 80 watts for the power. So we should be getting a better performance out of this.
I think that's a really great point that you're talking about in terms of the storage, because we are talking about, like you said, these AAA games or quadruple A games, if you will. If you consider that a lot of these base handheld models start with 512 gigs of storage, I mean, realistically, after your Windows installation, you're installing like 3 games maybe, right? And while it might be just a very minor nuisance to, uninstall and then reinstall, to your point, when you're paying this premium, it's one of those luxuries that you would like to afford, right? And I mean, like, I'll be totally honest about this. I'm not one who considers myself as someone who really needs to do fancy unboxings and stuff like that. But if I'm paying like a hefty premium for a device or a product, yeah, I want that fancy premium unboxing. Like, I get it because I spent, my hard-earned money on that. So I totally get the angle that you're talking about, and I think that totally makes sense to that regard. Although we don't have any confirmation about the storage sizes from Onexplayer, one little final point that I can add for the audience is that to that point about playing the AAA and the AAA titles, this is the Super X is supposed to come in the 64 gig and 128 gig RAM variants. So it's not starting at a 32 gig. So I don't know if that also means, or I don't know if that also spells doom for Zach's hope of a 385. It sounds like maybe it does, because there is no like SKU below that. And it's supposed to have, kind of the more standard LP DDR5X, which means it's soldered, and 8,000 mega transfers per second at that. One thing about the display I'll also add is, as a kind of side note, also, some people might be a little bit salty or a little bit like confused about why they didn't do something like the X1 or the X1 Pro or the X1 Air, the 10.95 inch display, and then have the integrated controllers. And that's something we talked about before going live tonight as well. It's probably because there's nobody that manufactures that panel. There's nothing of that size and an OLED. Probably the closest other one is like a 9-inch panel or 8.8-inch panel in like the Astra or the Legion tab. So it's significantly smaller or significantly larger. This 14-inch panel, we have a strong reason to believe this is the one that Asus themselves are using in their laptops, or even like Lenovo. So this is why they had to, kind of rebake or recook the entire device essentially. Now, from my personal perspective, it still would have been nice to have like the potential controller integration, but I don't necessarily think it's a deal breaker for people, because there's really no device like this on the market. And about that display again, it has the 4,096 points of touch, which should mean that it has, for anyone out there who wants to do like work stuff, it should have Microsoft Pen Protocol 2.0. Because a lot of the handhelds and stuff, even though they're touchscreen integrated, they're only like 5 or 10 point touch, which means you couldn't really realistically like do any like digital art on it, like maybe like stick figures or whatever, but you ain't drawing any waifus with that kind of like precision. But in this case,
fun fact, the X1 does have a digitizer, but the X1 Mini doesn't. So X1 Max would have made sense for that as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, maybe that's what we're saving the 385 for, right? We can still bully these guys into an X1 Max.
Yes, exactly.
Give us the
Don't let the flame burn out.
Yes, come on. Yes,
Ultra.
Yes, exactly. Make it yourselves, guys. We all watched that Gamers Nexus video. We know there's a whole factory and warehouses of these things. Just go. Yeah. Just go find it. Somebody's out there.
They can't stop all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And but speaking of stopping all of us, I think that this is probably going to stop our Speedcast for tonight. But I don't want you to stop the conversation, so please do stop by our Discord or leave us a comment down below if you want to talk to these experts. Thank you, everyone, for stopping in.
Penetration.
There you go.